Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take a deep dive into some pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Today, we're looking at something that sounds like it's straight out of a legal drama. A judge just ordered the reinstatement of thousands of federal employees fired under the Trump administration.
Oh, wow.
This isn't just some typical HR snafu.
Right.
This involves accusations of sham firings, the Justice Department refusing to let a key witness testify, and even a celebratory group chat of reinstated IRS employees.
That's interesting.
It is.
Yeah, so this situation raises some really fundamental questions.
He does.
About the balance of power within the government, the rule of law, and what it means to be a federal employee in the current political climate.
And we've got some really interesting sources for this deep dive.
Oh, cool.
We got news reports, court documents, even a leaked memo from the Department of Government Efficiency, the DOGE.
The DOGE!
Which, a side note, is run by Elon Musk.
Oh.
So our mission is to figure out what exactly went down, why it's such a big deal, and what this might mean for the future of the federal government.
It's going to be fascinating to really dig into this because it's interesting to note that the administration has been, pretty vocal about its goal to streamline and reduce the federal workforce.
Right.
But the legal framework surrounding those actions is complex, and this case really brings those complexities to the forefront.
Yeah, it seems like they might have, we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, so to set the stage.
Okay.
It all started earlier this year when the Office of Personnel Management, OPM people, basically the HR department for the federal government,
Right.
started pushing agencies to fire probationary employees.
Yeah.
Now, for our listener.
Yeah.
These are folks who are relatively new to their jobs, usually less than a year in, and they don't have the same protections as permanent employees.
And that's a crucial point because it makes them much more vulnerable to this kind of sweeping action.
Right, and we're not talking about a few isolated cases here.
Right.
Sources suggest thousands of probationary employees were let go across several major agencies,
Wow.
including Veterans Affairs, Agriculture, Defense, Energy, Interior, and Treasury.
Huge.
That's huge. So what was the administration's justification for this massive purge?
Yeah.
They pointed to performance issues.
And they even provided a template termination letter for agencies to use, all citing performance as the reason.
Oh, wow.
But labor unions and others immediately tried foul. They saw this as a blatant attempt to bypass the Reductions in Force Act, or RIF Act.
The RIF Act.
Which lays out very specific procedures for reducing the federal workforce. It's not a simple matter of just letting people go.
So this RIF Act, that's where things get legally tricky.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. What exactly does it say?
Well, the RIF Act was designed to protect federal employees from arbitrary firings and ensure fairness in the process. It establishes a system where employees are ranked based on things like performance seniority and veterans' preference, and agencies are required to follow a specific order of who gets let go first. It's not just a free-for-all.
So basically, the administration tried to sidestep this whole system by claiming performance issues.
That's what the lawsuits allege. And that's where Judge William Alsup comes in. He's been presiding over one of these cases in California. And he just dropped a bombshell ruling. He issued a preliminary injunction ordering those 6 agencies to immediately reinstate the fired workers.
Wow. Immediately, that sounds pretty serious.
It is, but what's even more significant are Judge Alsup's comments during the proceedings. He didn't mince words, calling the administration's actions a sham and accusing them of using performance as a pretext to get around the RIF Act.
So he didn't just disagree with them, he basically said they were flat out lying.
Yeah, and here's where it gets really interesting. Judge Alsup was incredibly sharp in his criticisms of the Justice Department, which was defending the administration's actions.
Okay.
He said, and I quote, "It is a sad day when our government would fire some good employee and say it was based on performance when they know good and well that's a lie."
So he wasn't just suggesting they made a mistake. He was saying they were intentionally misleading people. Ouch. But why would the administration go to such lengths to avoid the RIF Act? What's the big deal about following those procedures?
Well, following the RIF Act would have taken more time and resources.
Yeah.
It might have also meant having to justify each individual firing, which could have been politically challenging.
So perhaps they thought they could just bypass all of that and achieve their downsizing goals more quickly and with less scrutiny.
It's certainly possible, and it speaks to a broader tension between the desire for efficiency and the importance of following established legal procedures, especially when it comes to something as significant as people's livelihoods.
Yeah, and this brings us to perhaps the most perplexing piece of this whole puzzle. The Justice Department's refusal to let the acting head of OPM testify in court. They even withdrew a previous statement he had given.
Judge Alsup was visibly frustrated by this, calling the documents submitted by the Justice Department sham documents and press releases. It's clear he believes they were trying to hide something, which just adds another layer of intrigue to this whole saga.
So we've got mass firings, accusations of lying, and now potential evidence tampering.
Yeah.
This is more dramatic than that Netflix series I was watching last night. But before we get too carried away with the drama, I think it's important to remember that at the heart of this are real people whose lives have been turned upside down.
Right.
One of the sources we have even quotes a former IRS employee who was fired and is now celebrating with her former colleagues in a group chat after the judge's ruling.
Oh, wow.
It's a powerful reminder that these legal battles have very real human consequences.
Absolutely. This isn't just some abstract legal debate. These are people's careers, their families, their futures hanging in the balance.
Okay, so we've set the stage. We've got mass firings, a judge calling out the government, and hints at something deeper going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But we've only just scratched the surface here. There's a lot more to unpack.
Indeed, the implications of this ruling go far beyond these specific firings. It raises crucial questions about the role of government, the rights of workers, and the potential for overreach by a powerful administration.
Let's take a moment to gather our thoughts. When we come back, we'll dig deeper into the details of Judge Alsup's reasoning, the Justice Department's evasive tactics, and what this all means for the future of the federal government. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss this.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're back and ready to dig deeper into this fascinating and frankly a bit disturbing case. We left off talking about Judge Alsup's scathing criticisms of the administration's actions.
Right.
It's not every day you hear a judge accuse the government of lying, especially in such strong terms.
It's certainly not common, and it speaks to the depth of Judge Alsup's conviction that something wasn't right here. He clearly believed the administration was trying to pull a fast one, using performance as a smokescreen to achieve a larger goal of downsizing the government.
But wouldn't any administration want to streamline the government and make it more efficient? Isn't that just good governance?
Of course, efficiency is a worthwhile goal, but the problem is that the administration in this case seems to have prioritized speed over process, potentially violating the rights of thousands of employees in the process, and that raises some serious questions about the rule of law and whether the ends justify the means.
You mentioned earlier that Judge Alsup was particularly critical of the Justice Department.
Right.
What exactly did they do that was so egregious?
Well, for one, they refused to let the acting head of OPM testify, which raised red flags for the judge. It created the appearance that they were trying to shield crucial information from scrutiny.
It almost sounds like they were trying to protect the administration from embarrassment rather than seeking a fair and transparent legal process. I mean, isn't that their job, to uphold justice?
Theoretically, yes. But in practice, the Justice Department is part of the executive branch, which means they are ultimately answerable to the president, and that can create a conflict of interest in situations like this.
It sounds like a classic power struggle. The executive branch trying to push its agenda, and the judiciary stepping in to check that power and ensure that laws are being followed.
That's a great way to frame it, and it highlights the vital role that an independent judiciary plays in a democracy.
Okay, so let's say, for the sake of argument, that the administration truly believed they were acting in the best interests of the country by reducing the size of the government. Does that excuse their actions?
That's a tricky question. Even if their intentions were good, the way they went about achieving their goals matters. The rule of law requires that the government act within established legal frameworks, not circumvent them for expediency.
So it's not just about what you do, it's about how you do it. The process matters.
Exactly. And this case really underscores that point. The government can't just ignore procedures and trample on people's rights, even in pursuit of a larger goal.
It seems like this whole situation has opened up a real can of worms. We've got potential legal and ethical violations, a clash between branches of government, and thousands of people caught in the middle.
And let's not forget the Elon Musk factor. We mentioned earlier that he's running DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, which seems to be a driving force behind these efforts to streamline the government.
Right. So how does Musk's involvement play into all of this? I mean, he's known for shaking things up and pushing boundaries. Does this case suggest that he might be encouraging the administration to take a more aggressive, perhaps even reckless approach to achieving its goals?
It's certainly a possibility. Musk has a reputation for being a disruptor, and he may be bringing that same mindset to his role in DOGE, but it's important to remember that he's operating within the government now, which means he has to play by a different set of rules. This case might be a wake-up call, a reminder that even someone with his influence can't simply disregard legal procedures.
It sounds like this case has set a precedent, putting limits on how far the administration can go in its quest for a smaller government.
That's likely the case. The judge's ruling, if it stands, will have a chilling effect on future attempts to circumvent the RAF Act. But it also raises the question of what the administration will do next. They're not likely to simply abandon their goal of shrinking the government, so what will their next move be?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I suspect we'll be exploring the answer to that question in the final part of our deep dive. But before we go there, let's take a closer look at the human side of this story. We've talked a lot about the legal and political implications, but what about those probationary employees who were fired? Who are they? Why are they so vulnerable in this kind of situation? And what happens to them now? We'll tackle those questions when we come back. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been exploring this wild situation with federal employee firings, a judge throwing down the gauntlet, and even Elon Musk's role in all of this.
That's a lot.
But let's shift gears for a moment.
Okay.
And talk about the people at the heart of this story, those probationary employees.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the legal and political wrangling, but it's crucial to remember that real lives are being impacted by these decisions.
Right. And I think there's a misconception that probationary means these are all inexperienced or underperforming workers.
Right.
But as we touched on earlier, that's not necessarily the case.
Absolutely. Not many of these individuals might be new to their specific roles or to the federal government as a whole, but they could have years of experience in other sectors. Some might have even been promoted or transferred from other agencies, landing them in this vulnerable probationary period.
So essentially, they're caught in a system that doesn't offer them full protection just because they haven't hit a certain time marker.
Precisely. They're in a kind of limbo, expected to perform at a high level, but lacking the job security of their permanent colleagues. And as this case demonstrates, it makes them easy targets for sweeping workforce reductions, regardless of their actual performance.
It seems almost unfair. I mean, if the administration truly wanted to streamline the government and improve efficiency, wouldn't they want to focus on performance rather than just targeting the easiest to dismiss?
You would think so, and that's what makes Judge Alsup's ruling so significant. He recognized that many of these firings likely had little to do with actual performance issues and more to do with expediency. It's a classic case of cutting corners, and in this instance, it's people's livelihoods on the line.
And what about those who were ordered to be reinstated? Are they back at their desks breathing a sigh of relief?
Well, it's probably not that simple. The reinstatement order was immediate, but the long-term implications are still uncertain. The government could appeal the ruling, dragging the whole process out even further, and even if the ruling stands, there's no guarantee that these employees will be safe in the long run.
So they're back at work, but with this cloud of uncertainty hanging over their heads, that must be incredibly stressful.
Absolutely. They've already been through a traumatic experience losing their jobs, facing financial uncertainty, and navigating legal proceedings. And now they have to return to work knowing that their positions might still be in jeopardy.
It really makes you wonder about the human cost of these political battles. We talk about shrinking the government, streamlining processes, but we often forget about the individuals who are impacted by these decisions.
That's a crucial point. We need to remember that behind every statistic, every policy change, there are human stories. And in this case, those stories are filled with anxiety, uncertainty, and a sense of injustice.
It's a sobering reminder that even in a democracy, power can be misused, and individuals can be caught in the crossfire. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the key takeaways for our listener? What should they be thinking about as they follow this story going forward?
Well, I think this case highlights the importance of a strong and independent judiciary. Judge Alsup's willingness to stand up to the executive branch and uphold the rule of law is a powerful example of the checks and balances that are essential to a functioning democracy.
It also shows that even those who seem most vulnerable, like probationary employees, have rights that need to be protected.
Right.
And that individuals can fight back against injustice, even when facing a powerful adversary.
Exactly. This case is a reminder that the fight for fairness and accountability is ongoing. It requires vigilance, awareness, and a willingness to speak out against abuses of power, no matter who's in charge.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave our listener with a final thought, given Elon Musk's involvement in DOGE and the administration's clear focus on reshaping the government.
Mm-hmm.
What does this ruling tell us about the future of the federal workforce? What will it take to ensure that those who serve the public are treated fairly? And with respect, these are complex questions with no easy answers, but they are questions worth pondering as we navigate the ever-evolving landscape of government and power. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.